Well, hello Pisces, this is Joe with Divine Daily, and I'm going to do a what do you need to know for the month of May 2020. What is it you want to know? What is it you need to know? What is it that Spirit wants you to know? What's for your highest good to know about the month of May 2020? I'm going to pull some oracle cards and then some tarot cards. This will be a quick reading. It won't be very long and in-depth. The first thing is, I do read cards that jump out and fall out. I generally don't read reversals in this type of setting. And finally, how do you know if this is for you? You'll know it because it'll fit. You won't have to stretch it or force it into your circumstances, and it intuitively will just make sense to you. So as we head in the month of May here, Pisces, what is it that you're really needing to know? What is it that maybe is hidden from you, or what is it to that you need to really see that maybe you might miss that's for your highest good? So let's see what happens here. We have chaos and conflict. Interesting. And that's probably not something you wanted to hear, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. You might be coming out of a place of chaos and conflict. You might be the chaos and conflict might be somewhat internal to you. But let's see what else we get before we get too deep into this. We have exchanging gifts. So some of you might feel like I always go intuitively first, and what comes to me is the first thing I say rather than looking at things at face value. And so somebody might not be reciprocating in the way that you felt, Pisces. Somebody might not be as appreciative, and I'm very sorry for that loud noise. Somebody that might not be appreciative of you for what you thought was a very heartfelt, loving, and caring kind of gesture. And so it might have brought about a little bit of bad feelings here in the month of May. And I think there could be something here that calls attention to not being overly offended, but it just might not have been as well received as you had hoped. But we're going to pull one more of these before we move on. A loyal heart. But Pisces, you are that giving, caring, selfless person that will do everything you can to reinforce what it is that you feel about somebody. You will definitely not you won't break bread with somebody else that is not seated at your table. And so I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's the message I get. For some of you, that might be very specific, but you won't share with somebody else something that is really meant for another person. And so that's where this exchanging gifts might kind of come in to play here. You thought that perhaps something, that a nice gesture, it could be a gift, it could be anything that you were trying to give to another person, and it just wasn't as well received or as enthusiastically received as you thought. And but nonetheless, you are remaining true and committed to this person. Perhaps this could be a situation where things kind of get lost in translation a bit. But in the month of May, we also have transformation. We have some of you are coming out of your shell. Some of you are moving in a different direction, or maybe some of you are not just quite on the same path as your partner. And so some of this might reflect in kind of an unequal transformation, an unequal development, evolution of self. And so there could be some lagging here, and there might be some conflict, and that could be some of the source of that chaos and conflict that came out. Maybe you're in a different place, or they're in a different place than you are, and so something just kind of came to the surface that wasn't as well received as you'd hoped. But we're going to pull some tarot cards and see what goes further. The Page of Swords. So again, we talked about that give and receive, that reciprocation, and the Page of Swords to me is really about communicating your thoughts and what it is you think intellectually in this situation. And that might be it might have been kind of hard for the person you're dealing with to hear. They might not have appreciated your truth or your perspective, and that might be the source of the conflict. Maybe what you thought was a very heartfelt and a very giving type of thing really wasn't all that to them, and so there's this kind of element of taking offense. And let's see, we do have here the High Priestess. Pisces, this is really, could be, to me, the first thing. Aries could be an Aries you're dealing with, another fire sign, but regardless, doesn't matter if it is or it isn't, doesn't make a difference. So you're standing in your truth, you're standing in your higher, I want to say higher self, you're standing in your higher aspect, you're taking the higher road, because you know that there's some kind of miscommunication, or there's something that wasn't received because it wasn't communicated right, or the person that you were trying to communicate with, or you're trying to do something for, just didn't receive it in the way that you had hoped. And maybe it's because that person isn't in the same place as you right now. Everybody's going through their own stuff, everybody's feeling their own stuff, and certainly these are definitely difficult, trying times. You have the Four of Pentacles. You might be wanting to give to this person, but you might be a little reluctant because there's this feeling of, well, you didn't like what I had for you before. What's going to change that you like what I have to give you now? So there might be some kind of weird misinterpretation, this lost in translation kind of feeling, and where I feel like maybe there's kind of two different wavelengths here, and they just need to sync up. They need to kind of get into the same groove, and that's not happening in the month of May. There might just be that little bit of hang up or hiccup there, where really you're thinking and feeling the same thing, but you're communicating it differently, and that's where the problem kind of lies. So somebody has to, and I think this transformation, both people, you and your partner, have to kind of relax those rigid lines of communication and understand that you're both really saying the same thing, just from a different perspective. And really, there's no reason to get so caught up in the minutia and the semantics of how things are communicated, when ultimately there's the communication of the same belief, feeling, thoughts, and all of that kind of stuff. So very interesting here. This could be a miscommunication about really nothing. There's really nothing to miscommunicate about. Everything is as it should be, but there just might be an emotional place that each of you are coming from just a little bit different, and so it skews that perspective somewhat, but really it's communicating the same thing, and it kind of gets missed. They kind of just slightly miss one another when this communication happens. And then we have the Knight of Wands. We have this, this is like the epiphany of fire. The Knight of Wands is very fast, very charged kind of energy. It is moving and is moving forward. So I think this represents you, Pisces, as in the sense of you are determined to resolve any conflict that is coming out of your circumstances with this person. You're determined to kind of merge the differences that really aren't that different from one another, and you're determined to just let a lot of things go that maybe normally you wouldn't. Maybe normally there's some things you would fight about or argue about or have some kind of conflict about. Maybe there's just some things that you just are really for the sake of love, passion, and for the sake of the unit rather than the self, you're willing to let go, and you're willing just to let some things slide. And I think probably, Pisces, for some of you, this is a new thing. This is something that you haven't really done in the past. You've probably taken a very firm stance and held on to what it is you believed and thought, even if you had the realization sometime after, during an argument or a discussion, that maybe you were too hard or took too hard of a stance. But now I think there's something about you that's changing, that's willing to let the difference of opinion, thought, or words slide, because this is something you really want to work. And finally, I'm going to pull one more, because King of Swords. So we have a lot of that King energy, and this is a lot about communication and action. So your partner probably is seeing you as being determined or very passionate about you. Your partner's probably seeing you as being, and let me rephrase that, I said passionate about you, passionate about them, and that is probably coming back to you in a different kind of way. They are probably very kind of a hard egg to crack, but inside them they are feeling quite the same as you, but they just don't know how to reciprocate that. And so what this calls to is an element of patience, and I think this element of patience does come up with you here. And I'm going to pull another card, because I feel like this isn't the end here. There's some message here that is being missed. We have the, oh, look at that, the Two Swords, and we have the Hierophant. So there's something very traditional about your person. Maybe they're very traditional in their spiritual religious beliefs. Maybe they're very analytical and pragmatic and less whimsical, less prone to just let loose and just be free feeling kind of person. And so I think that's, I talked about the hard egg to crack. And so you might sometimes have a hard time deciding how you're going to approach your person in this and get them to see that you really don't have any ill will or bad intention toward them. Pisces, I feel like you might be a little bit hard-headed and a stronger person, maybe a little bit more of a dominant personality, and perhaps they don't just receive that so well. So I think this is saying to soften up, to let your person take the lead a little bit, let them be a little bit stronger of a person, a little bit more dominant, and you might find that this opens up and really blows open the whole dynamic here of give and take, love, and cooperation, and just good overall fun time that you are really seeking, that soulmate connection. I think that your person might have a hard time receiving. They might have a hard time accepting things from other people. They may not be very receptive to that type of energy and that type of feeling. It might be something they're very hung up on for other reasons that, you know, predate you. And the last card I'm going to pull is the Four of Wands, and this is really about celebration, getting along, commitment, having a good time, enjoying one another, enjoying those around you, and just wholeheartedly having that happiness, that joy and contentment. And I think this is where that ends in May, is getting over your own ideas and thoughts about where this person should be versus letting them just open up gradually on their own and giving them a little bit more, letting them feel like they have a little bit more skin in the game, so to speak, letting them feel like they have a little bit more control and a little bit, I don't want to say control because maybe that's not the right word, but like they're a little bit more valued than they are. They might have that slight tinge of narcissism. I don't want to say narcissistic, but they might have that slight tinge of that self-complex that needs to have that ego stroke just a little bit. And so if you can figure out how to finesse that, I think this kind of goes forward very nicely. And so with that said, Pisces, this is what you need to know for May, is to adapt, transform, change with the times, go with the ebb and flow. Give your partner, give the person you're with or you're interested in a little bit of the lead. If they have the lead a little bit, they definitely will feel a little bit better about things. And with that said, here's the reading. And if it makes sense, if it resonates with you, if it fits into your circumstances, please do like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, anything. I could appreciate the feedback. And have a good rest of your day. Stay healthy, happy, and safe.